Good evening, friends. Welcome to my deep sleep history. Imagine waking up tomorrow morning and the world outside your window has disappeared beneath endless white ice. Not just your city, not just your country. Entire continents buried beneath glaciers taller than skyscrapers. The air is so cold that every breath burns your lungs. The wind never seems to stop. The forests you know are gone. Instead, endless frozen plains stretch further than the eye can see. Now imagine hearing a distant sound. Not a car, not an aeroplane, but the thunder of hundreds of woolly mammoths crossing the frozen earth. This is not another planet. This is Earth, a world where giant beasts ruled the land, where humans fought every single day simply to survive, where one mistake in the freezing darkness could mean the end of an entire family. For thousands of years, ice shaped mountains, carved valleys, redirected rivers, and changed the destiny of every living creature. Some animals became giants, others vanished forever. Even our own ancestors were forced to adapt or disappear. But here's the most surprising part. The Ice Age wasn't just one frozen winter. It lasted for tens of thousands of years, transforming the entire planet in ways we can still see today. The lakes we visit, the hills we climb, the fertile lands where millions of people now live. Many of them exist because of ice that disappeared only a geological moment ago. And despite what many people believe, the Ice Age did not simply end overnight. Its story is far more complicated. Scientists continue to uncover remarkable evidence hidden beneath glaciers, inside caves, under the ocean floor, and frozen deep within Arctic permafrost. Every discovery reveals another chapter of a forgotten world. Tonight, we'll travel back more than 20,000 years. We'll walk beside mammoths, watch ancient hunters stalk enormous prey, enter caves where artists painted by the flicker of firelight, cross frozen land bridges connecting continents, witness the disappearance of incredible creatures, and discover how the Ice Age shaped the modern world and ultimately us. So settle in, dim the lights, relax, and let's journey into one of the coldest, wildest, and most extraordinary chapters in Earth's history.
Long before vast glaciers covered the northern hemisphere, Earth looked strikingly different. Forests stretched across regions that are now barren tundra. Rivers followed different paths. Sea levels were much higher. The climates of Europe, Asia, and North America were warmer, allowing diverse ecosystems to flourish. Yet beneath this seemingly stable world, enormous natural forces were quietly preparing one of the greatest environmental transformations in Earth's history. The continents continued their slow, relentless drift. Mountain ranges rose higher, ocean currents shifted, the atmosphere changed over thousands and millions of years. Tiny variations in Earth's orbit around the Sun gradually altered how much sunlight reached different parts of the planet. Each individual change was subtle, almost impossible to notice within a single lifetime. But over immense stretches of time, these small differences accumulated. Winters became slightly colder. Summers became just cool enough that snow surviving one season failed to melt completely during the next. Year after year, century after century, layer upon layer of snow compressed into ice. What began as isolated patches of permanent snow slowly expanded into enormous glaciers. No one living then could have realized they were witnessing the beginning of an age that would reshape continents. Entire valleys slowly disappeared beneath growing rivers of ice. Animals migrated south in search of food. Plants retreated as temperatures continued to fall. The rhythm of life itself began to change. This was not a sudden catastrophe. It was a transformation so gradual that generations lived and died without recognizing the scale of what was unfolding around them. But eventually, the growing ice would become impossible to ignore. The world was entering a new era, an era of cold, an era of survival, an era we now call the Ice Age. The first signs were almost impossible to notice. One winter lasted a little longer than the last. A summer felt slightly cooler. Snow lingered in the mountains for an extra few weeks. To the animals roaming the forests, these changes meant little. To the rivers, they meant everything. Each year, more snow survived the summer heat. Fresh snowfall buried the old layers beneath it. Over centuries, the lower layers were squeezed by their own immense weight, transforming soft snow into dense blue glacial ice. What looked peaceful from a distance was in reality one of the most powerful natural forces on Earth. A glacier is not frozen in place, it moves, slowly, almost silently. Sometimes only a few centimeters each day, sometimes several meters in a single year. But unlike rivers of water, glaciers never stop pushing forward. As the ice thickened, gravity pulled these frozen rivers downhill. They crushed forests beneath thousands of tons of pressure. They scraped away hillsides. They carved valleys that still exist today. Gigantic boulders larger than houses were lifted, carried for hundreds of kilometers, and dropped in places where they had no business being. Even today, geologists find these glacial erratics, massive rocks stranded far from the mountains where they originally formed. As the centuries passed, the glaciers grew larger. Across North America, an enormous ice sheet spread south from the Arctic. It swallowed what would one day become Canada, then it pushed even further.
Eventually, ice covered much of the northern United States. In Europe, another vast ice sheet advanced across Scandinavia and beyond. Northern Germany disappeared beneath ice. The British Isles were transformed. Across northern Asia, frozen landscapes stretched almost endlessly toward the horizon. At the height of the last ice age, some glaciers reached nearly 3 kilometers thick. Imagine standing beneath a wall of ice higher than 8 Eiffel Towers stacked on top of each other. That was the scale of this frozen world. The tremendous weight of the ice actually pressed the Earth's crust downward. Entire regions slowly sank under its crushing mass. Only thousands of years after the glaciers melted would the land begin rising again, a process that continues even today in parts of Scandinavia and Canada. The climate changed with the advancing ice. Powerful winds swept across the open plains. Dust storms carried fine particles across continents. Rainfall patterns shifted. Some regions became drier, others became colder than anything humans had ever experienced before. The oceans changed as well. Because so much water was locked inside glaciers, sea levels dropped by more than 100 meters. Coastlines expanded. Entire stretches of land appeared where oceans exist today. Some islands became connected to continents. New migration routes opened for both animals and humans. The Earth itself had been reshaped. The familiar world was gone.
In its place stood a planet of ice, wind, and endless horizons. Yet, despite the brutal cold, life did not disappear. If adapted, some creatures grew thick coats of insulating fur, others developed layers of fat to survive freezing temperatures. A few would become the undisputed giants of this icy kingdom. The frozen world was no longer empty. It was becoming home to some of the most extraordinary animals that had ever lived, and among them, none inspired more awe than the mighty woolly mammoth.
As the glaciers tightened their grip on the planet, a new ruler emerged across the frozen plains. It wasn't the fastest animal, it wasn't the fiercest predator, yet wherever it walked, the earth itself seemed to tremble. The woolly mammoth. Standing over 4 meters tall at the shoulder and weighing as much as a modern city bus, these magnificent giants became the unmistakable symbol of the Ice Age. But despite their enormous size, mammoths were not monsters. They were remarkably intelligent, deeply social animals that lived in close family groups, much like today's elephants. At the heart of every herd was an experienced female. She remembered where fresh water could still be found during harsh winters. She knew the safest migration routes. She recognized dangerous predators and guided younger members away from hidden threats. For the herd, her memory often meant the difference between survival and starvation.
A typical herd moved almost constantly. The Ice Age landscape offered little comfort. Food was never guaranteed. Each day, mammoths consumed well over 100 kilograms of grasses, sedges, herbs, and small shrubs. Finding enough vegetation for an entire family required endless travel across the vast mammoth steppe. This enormous ecosystem stretched from Western Europe across Siberia and into North America. Unlike the snow-covered wilderness many people imagine, much of this land was surprisingly dry. Open grasslands dominated the horizon. Strong winds prevented deep snow from accumulating in many areas, allowing hardy plants to survive. It was one of the richest grazing environments the Earth had ever known. The mammoths were perfectly built for it. Their long, shaggy coats trapped warm air close to their bodies. Beneath the fur lay a thick layer of insulating fat that protected them from temperatures far below freezing. Their ears were much smaller than those of modern elephants, reducing heat loss. Even their tails were shorter, helping conserve precious body warmth. Perhaps their most famous feature was their enormous curved tusks. Some stretched over 4 meters long. Scientists believe these tusks served many purposes. Males used them to compete for mates. Both males and females swept snow aside to uncover buried vegetation. They stripped bark from trees, lifted heavy obstacles, protected vulnerable calves from predators. Each tusk carried a lifetime of history. Just as tree rings reveal years of growth, mammoth tusks preserved clues about changing seasons, diets, illnesses, and migrations.
Today, researchers can read those ancient records thousands of years ago. The calves remained close to their mothers for many years. Older females helped care for newborns. The herd defended its youngest members with astonishing courage. If danger approached, adults formed a protective circle around the calves, presenting a wall of towering bodies and deadly tusks. It was an effective defense, but not every threat could be driven away. Lurking beyond the edges of the herd were powerful predators, always searching for weakness. Direwolves, cave lions, and eventually, humans. The first encounters between mammoths and humans were cautious. Neither fully understood the other. For early hunters, bringing down a healthy adult mammoth was an almost impossible challenge. One mistake could be fatal. A charging mammoth could crush bones with a single step. Its tusks could throw a hunter through the air. So people learned patience. They watched, tracked, studied migration routes, worked together in carefully planned groups. Sometimes they targeted young animals, sometimes the old or injured. Sometimes they used natural traps, steep ravines, muddy ground, or frozen riverbanks. Even a successful hunt came at a tremendous cost, yet the reward was enormous. One mammoth could feed dozens of people for weeks. Its hide became warm clothing and shelter. Its bones formed houses, tools, and even artwork. Its ivory was carved into ornaments and ceremonial objects. To Ice Age humans, the mammoth was far more than prey. It was the foundation of survival. For thousands of years, mammoths thrived across the frozen world. Generation after generation crossed the endless grasslands beneath cold blue skies. They survived brutal winters, powerful predators, and dramatic climate shifts. But the world was changing once again. The ice would not last forever. The great grasslands slowly began to disappear. Forests spread into lands once covered by open steppe, and a growing human population became increasingly skilled at hunting. The age of the mammoths was approaching its final chapter. Most would vanish forever, yet a small group would survive much longer than anyone once believed, living on a remote Arctic island until just 4,000 years ago, long after the Great Pyramids had already risen in Egypt. The mighty giants had endured the Ice Age itself, but they could not escape the changing world that followed.
If you had stood on an Ice Age hillside and looked across the frozen plains, you would have seen a world overflowing with life. The woolly mammoth may have been its greatest icon, but it was far from alone. The Ice Age was home to an astonishing collection of giant animals, creatures unlike anything alive today. Together, they formed one of the richest ecosystems in Earth's history. As the morning sun runs over the endless grasslands, enormous herds began to move. Thousands of hooves pounded the frozen ground. Clouds of icy breath drifted into the cold air. The frozen world was alive. Among the largest grazers was the woolly rhinoceros. At first glance, it looked familiar, but a closer look revealed an animal perfectly engineered for survival in extreme cold. Its body was wrapped in a thick coat of coarse brown fur. A heavy layer of fat beneath the skin protected it from freezing winds. Its ears and tail were short, reducing heat loss, just like the mammoths. Most impressive of all were its two horns. The front horn could grow well over a meter long. Scientists believe it wasn't used only for defense. During harsh winters, the rhinoceros lightly swept away snow with its horn to uncover the grasses hidden beneath. Every meal required strength. Every day demanded endurance. Sharing the same plains were enormous herds of steppe bison. Much larger than the bison that roam North America today, these powerful animals traveled in vast groups across the open steppe. Their thick muscles and massive shoulders allowed them to survive brutal winters. When wolves attacked, the herd formed a living wall. Adults faced outward, placing calves safely in the center. It was a simple strategy, but one that often saved lives. Nearby grazed graceful wild horses. Smaller than many modern horses, but incredibly tough, they spent nearly every hour searching for food beneath the snow. Their speed became their greatest defense. Unlike mammoths or bison, they relied on escape rather than confrontation. Not every giant was a grazer.
On the frozen plains of the Ice Age, danger did not always announce itself. Sometimes it waited in complete silence, hidden among tall grasses, behind scattered rocks, or in the shadows of a lonely forest edge. Then, in a single explosive moment, it attacked. This was Smilodon, the legendary saber-toothed cat. Despite its popular nickname, Smilodon was not the direct ancestor of today's lions or tigers. It belonged to a unique branch of cats that evolved specifically for hunting some of the largest animals ever to walk the earth. At first glance, its body looked strangely familiar. It was built like a modern big cat, but far more muscular. Its shoulders were broad, its chest was powerful, its forelegs were thick with muscle, giving it tremendous strength. Unlike the sleek cheetah or the fast-moving lion, Smilodon was not designed for long chases. It was an ambush hunter. Patience was its greatest weapon, and its most terrifying feature was impossible to ignore. Two enormous canine teeth extended from its upper jaw. Each could reach nearly 30 centimeters in length. For centuries, people believed these teeth were used to stab prey through the bones. Modern research tells a different story. Those famous fangs were surprisingly fragile. A careless strike against bone could snap them. Instead, Smilodon relied on precision. After overpowering its victim with immense strength, it used its powerful forelimbs to pin the struggling animal to the ground. Only then did it deliver a carefully placed bite to the soft tissues of the throat or neck. The attack was swift, efficient, and devastating. Its jaws could open to an astonishing angle, far wider than those of any living big cat. This extraordinary adaptation allowed the giant canines to reach deep into vulnerable areas. Every hunt demanded perfect timing. One mistake could mean serious injury. And in the Ice Age, an injured predator rarely survived for long. Smilodon often targeted large herbivores, young mammoths, juvenile bison, wild horses, camels, ground sloths. Whenever possible, it chose animals that had become separated from the safety of the herd. The hunt always began with silence. The cat remained almost invisible among the landscape. Its coat blended with dry grasses and scattered shrubs. The prey grazed peacefully, completely unaware. Then, a burst of explosive power. In only a few seconds, everything changed. Unlike wolves, which exhausted prey over long distances, Smilodon depended on surprise.
Its muscular body generated incredible force over short distances. If the first attack failed, the opportunity was usually lost. Scientists continue debating one fascinating question. Did Smilodon hunt alone or in groups? Some fossil discoveries suggest individuals survived serious injuries that would have made hunting alone nearly impossible. Broken limbs, damaged hips, healed fractures. Someone or something must have helped them survive. Many researchers believe Smilodon may have lived in social groups, sharing food and protecting injured members, much like modern lions. If true, that would make these fearsome predators even more formidable. Imagine several saber-toothed cats working together, waiting, watching, choosing the perfect moment. Even mammoth calves would have been vulnerable. Yet despite its incredible power, Smilodon faced fierce competition. Cave lions roamed many of the same regions. Dire wolves hunted organized packs. Short-faced bears claimed carcasses through sheer size and intimidation. And then, there was a new competitor. One unlike any predator that had ever existed. It wasn't stronger than Smilodon. It wasn't faster. It didn't have giant claws or razor-sharp fangs. But it possessed something far more dangerous. A mind capable of planning, communicating, inventing, working together. Humans. At first, they were little more than another scavenger on the frozen plains. But with every passing generation, they became smarter, more organized, more skilled. Their weapons improved. Their hunting strategies evolved. The balance of power was beginning to shift. For millions of years, predators like Smilodon had mauled the wilderness. Now, for the first time, a new hunter was rising. One that would eventually outlast every giant beast of the Ice Age.
Before cities, before farming, before written language, humanity lived at the mercy of nature. There were no warm houses waiting at the end of a difficult day, no supermarkets, no hospitals, no roads, only snow, ice, wind, and an endless struggle to survive. The first humans who entered the frozen world were unlike us in many ways, yet in one important respect, they were exactly the same. They dreamed, they feared, they loved their families, and every morning they woke with a single goal: stay alive. Across Europe, Asia, and eventually North America, small groups of hunter-gatherers followed the great herds. Their lives depended entirely on the movements of animals. If the mammoths migrated, the people followed. If the reindeer changed direction, entire families packed everything they owned and moved. Home was never permanent. The average group was small, perhaps 20 to 40 people. Everyone had a role. The strongest adults hunted. Others gathered edible roots, berries, nuts, and medicinal plants whenever the seasons allowed. Older members passed down knowledge. Children learned by watching. Every skill was taught through experience. There were no classrooms. Nature was the teacher.
And the lessons were often unforgiving. One careless mistake could cost a life. Winter was the greatest challenge. Temperatures dropped far below freezing. Blizzards could last for days, sometimes weeks. Food became scarce, fresh water froze solid, even collecting firewood became dangerous. Without fire, survival was almost impossible. Fire provided warmth. It cooked meat, making it easier to digest. It frightened away many predators. It hardened wooden spear tips. It gave light inside dark caves. And perhaps most importantly, it brought people together. At night, families gathered around the flames. The fire became more than a tool. It became the center of their world. Stories were told. Children listened. Hunters described dangerous encounters. Elders shared memories of distant lands and changing seasons. Long before books existed, knowledge traveled from one generation to the next through spoken words. Clothing was another matter of life and death. Simple animal skins were not enough.
People carefully stitched hides together using bone needles, some so finely crafted that they still astonish archaeologists today. Thread was made from animal sinew, fur was worn on the inside for warmth, outer layers protected against wind and snow, boots were stuffed with dry grasses to improve insulation. Every piece of clothing represented countless hours of careful work. Shelter varied with the landscape. In some regions, caves offered natural protection. Elsewhere, people built temporary homes from wood, animal hides, and even mammoth bones. These remarkable structures could withstand powerful Arctic winds. Inside, thick hides covered the ground. A central fire burned almost constantly. Life was difficult, but not hopeless. People adapted with incredible creativity. Their tools grew more advanced. Stone blades became sharper. Spears became longer and stronger. Eventually, spear throwers allowed hunters to launch weapons farther and with greater force. Each innovation increased the chances of survival. Yet no matter how skilled they became, humans were never alone. Outside the circle of firelight, eyes watched from the darkness. Cave lions, wolves, hyenas, bears, every hunt carried enormous risks. A wounded mammoth could crush a hunter. A charging bison could shatter bones. Thin ice could swallow an entire group without warning. Still, they continued, because they had something no other Ice Age creature possessed: the ability to imagine the future, to make plans, to cooperate with strangers, to learn from mistakes, to improve with every generation. These abilities slowly transformed humans from vulnerable survivors into the most adaptable species on Earth. But the frozen wilderness was not inhabited by only one kind of human. Another intelligent people already called this icy world home. They were powerful, resourceful, masters of survival. For hundreds of thousands of years they had thrived where few others could. Their name was the Neanderthals, and soon their paths would cross with our own.
Imagine walking through a snow-covered valley nearly 50,000 years ago. In the distance, you notice smoke rising from the mouth of a cave. You might assume another group of people is living there, and you would be right, but they would not be our people. They would be Neanderthals. For generations, they have often been portrayed as crude, unintelligent cavemen, large, hairy, barely capable of speech. Modern science tells a very different story. Neanderthals were not primitive monsters. They were human relatives, intelligent, resourceful, and remarkably well adapted to one of the harshest environments on Earth. Compared with modern humans, Neanderthals had shorter, stockier bodies. This wasn't an accident. Their broad chests, powerful muscles, and shorter limbs helped conserve body heat during long, freezing winters. They were built for the cold. Their large noses warmed icy air before it reached their lungs. Their immense physical strength allowed them to hunt dangerous animals at close range. A single Neanderthal hunter was far stronger than the average modern person. Yet strength alone was never enough. Like us, they survived through cooperation. Small family groups worked together to gather food, care for children, and defend one another. Archaeological discoveries reveal something deeply moving. Some Neanderthal skeletons belonged to individuals who had suffered devastating injuries, broken legs, damaged arms, even severe disabilities. Yet these people lived for years after their injuries. That could only mean one thing: someone cared for them. Someone shared food, protected them, helped them survive. Compassion was not unique to modern humans. It already existed among our ancient relatives. Their lives revolved around the rhythm of nature.
During warmer months, they hunted horses, deer, bison, and wild goats. When winter arrived, survival became far more difficult. Every successful hunt mattered. Every piece of meat was precious. Nothing was wasted. Animal hides became clothing, bones became tools, tendons became thread. Even fat was carefully stored as a valuable source of energy. Their stone tools were masterpieces of craftsmanship. Using a sophisticated technique, Neanderthal toolmakers carefully shaped sharp flakes from prepared stone cores. The results were strong, efficient cutting tools used for butchering animals, preparing hides, and woodworking. For hundreds of thousands of years, this technology served them well. Fire remained the heart of every camp. It provided warmth during freezing nights, cooked food, protected against predators, and offered light in complete darkness. Families gathered around the flames much as we still gather around dinner tables today. Perhaps they told stories, perhaps they planned tomorrow's hunt. No one can know for certain, but evidence suggests their social lives were far richer than once imagined. One of the greatest mysteries concerns language. Did Neanderthals speak? Scientists cannot hear voices from 50,000 years ago. But clues remain. The structure of their throat, the bones of the inner ear, the genes they shared with us. Together they suggest Neanderthals almost certainly possessed some form of spoken language, perhaps not identical to our own, but complex enough to cooperate, teach, and share knowledge. Then there was art. For many years, researchers believed only modern humans created symbolic art. That belief has changed. Pigments, engraved bones, decorated shells, and mysterious cave markings all hint that Neanderthals also expressed ideas beyond simple survival. They may have worn ornaments, painted with mineral pigments, even buried some of their dead with care. These discoveries force us to ask a profound question. How different were they from us, really? The answer may be, not very different at all. Then, around 45,000 years ago, another human population spread rapidly across Europe. They carried more advanced tools, created breathtaking cave paintings, developed wider trade networks, adapted quickly to changing environments. These were Homo sapiens, our direct ancestors. For thousands of years, the two human species shared the same landscapes. They hunted many of the same animals. Sometimes they competed. Sometimes they avoided one another. And sometimes they met peacefully. In fact, those encounters left a permanent mark on history. Today, many people outside Africa still carry a small percentage of Neanderthal DNA within their own bodies, a silent reminder that these ancient humans did not simply disappear. Part of them lives on, inside millions of us. But despite their remarkable resilience, the Neanderthals were living through a world that was changing faster than ever before. The climate shifted, the great herds moved, resources became harder to find, and competition grew increasingly fierce. Slowly, their numbers declined. One small community after another faded into history, until eventually the last Neanderthals vanished, leaving modern humans alone to inherit the frozen world.
The largest animals on Earth were not hunted with speed. They were hunted with patience. Imagine standing on a frozen plain just before sunrise. The air is so cold that every breath becomes a cloud of white mist. Far in the distance, a herd of mammoths slowly moves across the grassland, searching for food buried beneath a thin layer of snow. For a hungry human family, that herd represents everything: food, warm clothing, shelter, tools, fuel, hope. But it also represents enormous danger. A single adult mammoth could weigh more than 10 tons. Its tusks were longer than a person was tall. One powerful charge could scatter an entire hunting party. No one hunted a mammoth alone. Success depended on teamwork. Long before the hunt began, experienced trackers studied the herd. They looked for footprints pressed deep into the frozen ground, broken branches, fresh droppings, even the direction of the wind. The hunters always stayed downwind. A mammoth's sense of smell was excellent. If it caught the scent of humans too early, the entire herd could disappear beyond the horizon. Patience was often more valuable than courage. Sometimes hunters followed a herd for days, waiting, watching, learning its habits. They searched for weakness: a young calf that wandered too far from its mother, an old bull slowed by age, an injured animal struggling to keep pace. Nature rarely offered easy opportunities, but skilled hunters knew that forcing a direct battle against a healthy adult mammoth was a gamble few survived. Instead, they relied on the landscape. Steep ravines became natural traps. Frozen marshes slowed heavy animals. Riverbanks created narrow escape routes. Every hill and valley became part of the hunter's strategy. When the moment finally arrived, everyone knew their role.
Some hunters moved behind the herd, shouting and waving burning branches to create confusion. Others waited ahead with long wooden spears tipped with carefully shaped stone points. The goal was never reckless bravery, it was careful coordination. The frightened mammoths thundered forward. Snow exploded beneath their enormous feet. The ground trembled. Hunters ran along the edges of the herd, avoiding the crushing weight of the charging giants. A single well-placed spear was rarely enough. Again and again the hunters attacked. Each strike weakened the exhausted animal. The struggle could last for hours, sometimes even longer. Victory brought celebration, but it also marked the beginning of another enormous task. Nothing could be wasted. The meat was carefully cut into strips and dried or frozen for future meals. The thick hide became warm clothing, blankets, tents, and protective coverings. Massive bones were transformed into building frames for shelters, especially in the treeless plains of Eastern Europe. Some remarkable archaeological sites reveal entire homes built from mammoth bones, arranged in circles and covered with animal skins. The tusks became valuable raw material. Craftsmen carved them into spear points, needles, ornaments, musical instruments, and small sculptures. Even the marrow hidden inside the bones provided precious calories during harsh winters. A single successful hunt could support dozens of people for weeks. But mammoths were not the only targets. Humans also hunted reindeer during their seasonal migrations. Wild horses raced across open grasslands. Steppe bison provided huge quantities of meat. Smaller animals, hares, foxes, birds, and fish, helped fill the gaps when larger prey became scarce. Over time, human hunting techniques became increasingly sophisticated. Stone blades grew sharper, spears became lighter and stronger. Then came one of the greatest innovations of the Ice Age, the spear thrower. Known today as the atlatl, this simple tool acted as an extension of the hunter's arm, allowing spears to fly farther, faster, and with far greater force. Suddenly, hunters no longer needed to approach massive animals quite so closely. The balance between humans and the giants of the Ice Age had begun to shift. Yet hunting was never only about survival. It shaped culture itself. Before dangerous expeditions, some groups may have performed rituals, painted their bodies, offered prayers to unseen spirits, asked nature for success, because everyone understood the truth. Not every hunter returned home.
Some were crushed beneath frightened bison. Others disappeared during blizzards. Some simply never came back. The Ice Age demanded a terrible price. But with every generation, humans became wiser. Their tools improved, their knowledge expanded, their confidence grew. Soon, they would leave behind something extraordinary. Not weapons, not bones, but beautiful works of art that would survive for tens of thousands of years. Deep inside hidden caves, where flickering firelight danced across stone walls, the first great artists of humanity began to paint. Long before museums, long before books, long before the first written word, human beings were already telling stories. Not with ink, not with paper, but with stone. Deep beneath the surface of the earth, hidden inside silent caves where sunlight never reached, Ice Age artists created masterpieces that would survive for tens of thousands of years. Imagine entering one of these caves. The outside world disappears behind you. The air becomes colder. Every step echoes through the darkness. The only light comes from a small stone lamp burning animal fat. Its soft flickering flame causes shadows to dance across the rough walls. To ancient people, this place must have felt mysterious, almost sacred. Perhaps it was more than a shelter. Perhaps it was a place where the physical world met the spiritual one. The artists chose their locations carefully. Many paintings were created deep inside winding cave passages, far from the entrance. Some required crawling through narrow tunnels. Others could only be reached after climbing slippery rocks. These were not places visited by accident. The journey itself may have been part of an important ritual. Using simple but remarkably effective materials, the artists brought the walls to life. Black pigment came from charcoal and manganese. Red and yellow colors came from iron-rich minerals known as ochre. The pigments were mixed with water, animal fat, or plant juices to create paint. Some artists used their fingers. Others painted with brushes made from animal hair, moss, or chewed sticks. Sometimes they blew pigment through hollow bird bones, creating soft sprays of color across the stone. Even today, you can still see the outline of human hands left behind by this technique. A silent signature, across thousands of generations.
The animals they painted were astonishingly realistic. Massive bison with powerful shoulders, graceful horses running across open plains, woolly mammoths covered in thick fur, reindeer, wild cattle, cave lions, rhinoceroses, and ibex. The artists understood movement. muscles, body shape. They often used the natural curves of the cave walls to give their paintings a three-dimensional appearance. As the firelight flickered, the animals almost seemed to move, to breathe, to come alive. Why did they create these images? No one knows for certain. Perhaps the paintings were connected to hunting rituals. Some researchers believe hunters painted animals before a hunt, hoping to ensure success. Others think the caves served as places for ceremonies, storytelling, or teaching young members of the group. Another possibility is even more fascinating. Perhaps these paintings expressed imagination itself, the simple human desire to create something beautiful, to leave behind a memory, to say, "We were here." Among the most mysterious figures are creatures that seem to combine human and animal features. A man with the head of a bird, a human body wearing antlers, half beast, half human. Were these shamans, spiritual leaders, mythical beings, or symbols from stories now lost forever? The answers disappeared with the people who painted them, yet the questions remain. Music may also have filled these underground chambers. Archaeologists have discovered flutes carved from bird bones and mammoth ivory, some over 40,000 years old. Imagine the sound, a haunting melody echoing through the darkness while flames flickered against painted walls. Perhaps families gathered here during long winters. Perhaps children listened to stories about the great mammoths, the mighty cave lions, the spirits of their ancestors. These caves were more than art galleries. They were libraries without books, temples without written prayers, classrooms without teachers. They preserved knowledge, beliefs, and identity in a world where nothing was written down. Thousands of years later, many of these masterpieces still survive, hidden beneath layers of rock, protected by darkness, waiting patiently for modern explorers to discover them. They remind us of something extraordinary. The people of the Ice Age were not simply struggling to survive. They laughed, they imagined, they created, they dreamed. In many ways, they were already fully human. But while artists painted by firelight, the world outside the caves continued to change. The glaciers slowly advanced and retreated, sea levels rose and fell. Entire continents became connected by land that no longer exists today. One of those vanished landscapes would change human history forever. It was a frozen bridge, stretching between Asia and North America, a bridge that allowed people and animals to enter an entirely new world. Its name was Beringia.
Imagine standing on a vast wind-swept plain. To your left lies Asia. To your right lies North America. Yet there is no ocean between them, no crashing waves, no ships, only endless grasslands stretching to the horizon. It sounds impossible today, but during the height of the Ice Age, this was reality. Because so much of Earth's water was locked inside massive glaciers, global sea levels dropped by more than 100 meters. As the oceans retreated, the floor of what is now the Bering Strait emerged from the sea. A gigantic land bridge appeared. Scientists call this lost world Beringia. It wasn't a narrow strip of land. At its widest, Beringia stretched for nearly 1,500 kilometers, larger than many modern countries. It was a world of rolling grasslands, low shrubs, scattered rivers, and cold, dry winds. Surprisingly, it was not buried beneath thick ice. Instead, it became one of the richest grazing environments on the planet. Huge herds of mammoths wandered freely. Steppe bison grazed across endless fields. Wild horses raced over the frozen earth. Muskoxen, reindeer, wolves, foxes, and countless birds also called Beringia home. For thousands of years, it served as a natural highway connecting two continents. Animals crossed without knowing they were entering an entirely different world. Generation after generation moved east and west, following food and changing seasons. Then came the humans.
No one woke up one morning and decided to discover America. The journey happened slowly, almost accidentally. Small bands of hunter-gatherers followed the great herds. Where the mammoths traveled, people followed. Where the bison grazed, families camped nearby. Children were born along the journey. Elders passed away. Generations lived and died without realizing they were crossing from one continent to another. To them, it was simply home. Life in Beringia was far from easy. Winter temperatures could plunge far below freezing. Powerful winds swept across the open plains. Food was never guaranteed. Yet compared to the towering glaciers that blocked much of northern North America, Beringia offered opportunity. It was a land rich in wildlife, a place where skilled hunters could survive. For thousands of years, some human groups may have remained there, living in relative isolation. Scientists sometimes refer to this as the Beringian standstill, a period when early populations stayed in Beringia before continuing further into the Americas. Then, as the climate slowly warmed, the world changed once again. The glaciers that had blocked the way into North America began to retreat. New pathways opened. Some groups may have traveled through an ice-free corridor between the melting glaciers. Others likely followed the Pacific coastline, moving south in small boats or along the shore. Whichever route they took, the result was extraordinary. Humans entered a continent unlike anything they had ever seen. North America was filled with giant animals: Columbian mammoths, American mastodons, giant ground sloths, short-faced bears, giant beavers, camels, ancient horses, and predators unlike any they had encountered before. It was a land overflowing with life. Over the following thousands of years, humans spread across North America, then into Central America, eventually reaching the southern tip of South America. One of the greatest migrations in human history had taken place, not through planned exploration, not through powerful kingdoms, but through countless small decisions made by ordinary families searching for food and survival. Today, Beringia lies hidden beneath the waters of the Bering Strait. The grasslands are gone, the mammoths have vanished, the campsites are submerged beneath the sea. Yet beneath those cold waters, traces of that forgotten world still remain. Every archaeological discovery adds another piece to the puzzle of humanity's incredible journey. But while people explored new lands, the climate itself was beginning to shift. Slowly, almost unnoticed, the glaciers that had dominated Earth for thousands of years were starting to weaken. The frozen world was entering its final chapter. And with the warming climate would come one of history's greatest mysteries. Why did so many of the Ice Age's giant animals disappear forever?
For thousands of years, the giants ruled the Earth. Woolly mammoths marched across frozen grasslands. Woolly rhinoceroses grazed beneath icy skies. Giant ground sloths wandered ancient forests. Steppe bison filled the plains. Saber-toothed cats stalked their prey. It seemed as though this incredible world would last forever. But nature has a way of reminding every living creature, nothing lasts forever. Around 20,000 years ago, something began to change. At first, it was almost impossible to notice. The summers grew just a little warmer. The winters became slightly shorter. Glaciers that had remained frozen for thousands of years slowly began to melt. Each year, tiny streams of water flowed from the edges of the great ice sheets. Year after year, century after century, those streams became rivers. The rivers fed growing lakes, and the lakes eventually poured back into the oceans. Sea levels began to rise. The coastlines of the world slowly disappeared beneath the returning water. The great land bridge of Beringia, once connecting Asia and North America, was gradually swallowed by the sea. Families who had once walked across its vast plains would never make that journey again. But the rising oceans were only part of the story. The warming climate transformed the land itself. The endless mammoth steppe, one of the richest grassland ecosystems ever to exist, began to disappear. As temperatures increased, shrubs spread across the plains. Then came forests. Trees slowly replaced the open grasslands that mammoths, horses, and bison had depended on for thousands of years. For the giants of the Ice Age, this was a disaster. A mammoth needed enormous quantities of grass every single day. Dense forests could not provide enough food. Their ancient migration routes became blocked by expanding woodlands.
Herds that had traveled the same paths for generations suddenly found unfamiliar landscapes waiting before them. Some adapted, many could not. The woolly rhinoceros faced the same problem. Perfectly suited to cold, open grasslands, it struggled as its habitat vanished. One population after another disappeared. The saber-toothed cats suffered as well. Their prey became scarcer. The great herbivores that had sustained them for thousands of years were declining. Without enough food, even the most powerful predator cannot survive. Then there were the humans. By this time, Homo sapiens had spread across much of the world. They were more numerous than ever before. Their hunting tools had improved. Stone spear ponds became sharper. New hunting techniques increased success. People understood animal migrations better than any predator. For decades, scientists debated one of archaeology's greatest mysteries. What caused the extinction of the Ice Age giants? Was it climate change or human hunting? Today, most researchers believe the answer was probably both. Climate change weakened animal populations, habitat shrank, food became less reliable, then humans added another layer of pressure. Even if people hunted only a small number of large animals each year, slowly reproducing species like mammoths struggled to recover. A female mammoth gave birth only once every several years. Losing too many adults meant fewer calves. Fewer calves meant smaller herds. Smaller herds became more vulnerable. Generation after generation, their numbers declined. Some populations survived surprisingly long. On remote Arctic islands, isolated mammoths continued living for thousands of years after their relatives disappeared from the mainland. They watched a changing world unfold around them. But isolation brought new problems. Small populations lost genetic diversity. Resources became limited. Eventually, the last mammoths disappeared. Silently, without witnesses, without realizing they were the final members of a species that had ruled the earth for hundreds of thousands of years. The same story repeated itself across the globe. The giant ground sloths vanished. The American lions disappeared.
The saber-toothed cats were gone. The woolly rhinoceroses faded into history. The short-faced bears disappeared forever. An entire world of giants came to an end. Yet not everything was lost. Some species endured. Reindeer survived. Muskoxen survived. Wolves adapted. Brown bears continued their journey through history. And humans inherited a very different planet. A warmer world, a greener world. A world where farming, villages, and eventually civilizations would become possible. The Ice Age had ended, but its fingerprints remained everywhere. The valleys carved by glaciers, the lakes left behind by melting ice, the enormous rocks carried hundreds of kilometers by frozen rivers. Even today, if you know where to look, the Ice Age is still all around us. But before humanity built cities and kingdoms, there was one final challenge. The melting glaciers unleashed floods unlike anything our species had ever witnessed. And those floods would reshape the face of the Earth itself.
For thousands of years, the glaciers had seemed eternal. Walls of ice towered over valleys, frozen rivers stretched beyond the horizon. Entire continents lay buried beneath a blanket of white. It was easy to believe they would never disappear. But nothing in nature is permanent. As the Earth's climate continued to warm, the glaciers began to retreat. Not in a single year, not even in a single century, but over thousands of years, the frozen giants slowly surrendered to the sun. At first, the changes were almost invisible. Tiny streams trickled from the edges of the ice. Then those streams became rushing rivers. The rivers joined together, filling enormous basins that had been carved by glaciers long before. Soon, vast lakes appeared across the landscape. Some were larger than entire modern countries. One of the greatest was Glacial Lake Agassiz, an immense body of water that covered parts of what are now Canada and the northern United States. Imagine a lake so enormous that standing on one shore, you could never see the other. Its surface stretched farther than the eye could follow. Yet even this giant lake was trapped. Natural dams made of ice held back unimaginable amounts of water. For centuries, they stood firm. Until one day, they failed. When an ice dam collapsed, the results were almost beyond comprehension. Walls of water surged across the land. Entire valleys were flooded within hours. Rivers swelled into raging torrents many kilometers wide. The force of the water ripped away forests, shattered rock cliffs, and carried boulders the size of houses for astonishing distances.
These were among the largest floods the Earth has experienced since the end of the last Ice Age. In some regions, the floods carved entirely new landscapes. Deep canyons appeared where flat ground had once existed. Wide channels were cut through solid rock. Today, geologists can still trace the paths of these ancient megafloods. The scars remain etched into the earth. The oceans also began to rise. Every year, more glacial ice melted into the sea. Slowly but relentlessly, coastlines moved inland. Places where people had once hunted became flooded forever. Ancient campsites disappeared beneath the waves. The great land bridge of Beringia vanished beneath the ocean. Britain, once connected to mainland Europe by dry land, gradually became an island. Around the world, the map of Earth was being redrawn.
For the people living through these changes, the transformation must have seemed extraordinary. Imagine returning to a favorite hunting ground only to find it underwater. A river that had always flowed gently was now a powerful torrent. A familiar valley had become a vast lake. Entire migration routes disappeared. Communities were forced to adapt once again. Some moved to higher ground, others followed new herds into unfamiliar territories. The changing climate reshaped every aspect of life. Plants spread into lands that had been frozen for thousands of years. Forests expanded northward, birds returned with the warmer seasons. New ecosystems slowly replaced the cold grasslands of the Ice Age. The world became greener, richer, more familiar to us today. Yet the memory of these dramatic floods may have survived far longer than the floods themselves. Many cultures around the world tell stories of great floods that covered the land. Legends passed from generation to generation speak of rising waters, disappearing worlds, and people forced to seek safety on higher ground. While these stories were written down thousands of years after the Ice Age, some researchers wonder whether distant memories of post-glacial flooding echoed through countless generations before becoming the myths we know today. We may never know for certain, but one thing is undeniable. The end of the Ice Age was not simply a quiet melting of snow. It was one of the greatest environmental transformations in human history. As the glaciers disappeared, a new world emerged, one filled with forests, rivers, wetlands, and fertile plains. For the first time in thousands of years, humans no longer needed to spend every season chasing the great herds across frozen continents. Some groups began staying in one place a little longer. They gathered wild grains, stored food, experimented with new ways of living. Without realizing it, they were taking the first small steps towards one of humanity's greatest revolutions, the birth of agriculture, and with it, the end of the Ice Age world.
The Ice Age was over. The glaciers that had ruled the northern hemisphere for thousands of years continued their slow retreat. The giant mammoths were gone. The saber-toothed cats had vanished. The endless frozen grasslands faded into memory. It might seem as though the story had ended, but in truth, it was only the beginning. Because the world we live in today was born from the Ice Age. Every melting glacier left behind a new landscape. As the massive ice sheets scraped across continents, they carved deep valleys into solid rock. When the ice disappeared, those valleys filled with water. The result was breathtaking. Thousands upon thousands of lakes. In places like Canada, Finland, and Scandinavia, countless lakes still reflect the work of glaciers that vanished thousands of years ago. Some of the world's most beautiful landscapes owe their existence to moving ice. The same glaciers also created fertile plains. As they ground rocks into fine mineral-rich soil, they spread these sediments across enormous areas. When the climate warmed, grasses and forests quickly covered this fresh land. These fertile regions would one day become ideal places for farming. Without the glaciers, many of the world's great agricultural landscapes might never have existed. The rivers changed as well. Melting ice fed mighty waterways that still shape human civilization today. These rivers carried fresh water across continents, nourishing plants, animals, and eventually human communities. Fish populations expanded, wetlands formed, wildlife flourished. The earth was becoming increasingly hospitable. For thousands of years, humans had lived as nomadic hunter-gatherers. They followed the seasons, they followed the herds. Their homes were temporary, but the warmer climate changed everything. Wild wheat, barley, and other grasses spread across parts of the Middle East and beyond.
People who had once gathered these plants seasonally began noticing something remarkable. Seeds dropped into the soil would grow again the following year. At first, they simply encouraged nature. Later, they planted deliberately. It was a quiet discovery, yet it would transform the future of humanity. Agriculture had begun. With farming came stability. Families no longer needed to travel constantly. Permanent villages appeared. Food surpluses allowed populations to grow. People developed new skills. Some became potters, others became builders, toolmakers, weavers, traders. The first true communities emerged. Animals were also domesticated. Dogs had already become trusted companions during the Ice Age, helping with hunting and protection. Now sheep, goats, cattle, and pigs gradually joined human settlements.
life became increasingly connected to the land. The great migrations of the Ice Age slowly gave way to permanent homes. Generations later, villages became towns, towns became cities, cities became civilizations. Every empire, every kingdom, every nation can trace its distant roots back to the environmental changes that followed the last Ice Age. Even our coastlines tell the story. Many ancient settlements from the end of the Ice Age now lie beneath the sea. As the oceans rose, they covered lands where people once walked, hunted, and lived. Archaeologists continue searching beneath coastal waters, discovering traces of forgotten landscapes hidden for thousands of years. Meanwhile, the land itself continues to recover. In parts of Canada and northern Europe, the Earth's crust is still slowly rising after being compressed beneath kilometers of ice. The glaciers disappeared thousands of years ago, yet the planet is still responding to their enormous weight. The Ice Age never truly stopped shaping the Earth. Its influence remains all around us. The mountains we admire, the valleys we travel through, the lakes where we fish, the rich soils that feed billions of people, even the roots of many modern rivers, all carry the fingerprints of ancient ice. And perhaps the greatest legacy of all is us. The hardships of the Ice Age forced humans to become adaptable, cooperative, and endlessly creative. We learned to solve problems together, to invent tools, to communicate across generations, to survive in environments where few other species could endure. Those same qualities eventually carried us far beyond frozen plains, into villages, cities, civilizations, and finally, into the modern world. Yet one fascinating question remains. Was the last Ice Age truly the end, or is our planet simply waiting for the next one?
Imagine waking up thousands of years from now. The summers are shorter, the winters last longer. Snow remains on the mountains even after spring has passed. Year by year, the white patches grow larger. Slowly, almost imperceptibly, the Earth begins to freeze once more. Could it happen? The surprising answer is yes, but not in the way many people imagine. Many people think the Ice Age was a single event, one long frozen chapter that began and then ended forever. In reality, Earth's history tells a very different story. For the last 2.6 million years, our planet has been living in what scientists call the Quaternary Ice Age. Within this long Ice Age, there have been repeated cycles. Long cold glacial periods when massive ice sheets spread across continents, and warmer interglacial periods like the one we live in today. In other words, the Ice Age never truly ended. The giant glaciers retreated, but the planet is still technically in an Ice Age. We're simply living during one of its warmer chapters. So what causes these dramatic shifts? The answer lies far beyond Earth's atmosphere. Our planet does not travel around the sun in exactly the same way forever. Over tens of thousands of years, 3 slow astronomical cycles gradually change the amount of sunlight reaching different parts of Earth. The shape of Earth's orbit changes, the tilt of Earth's axis shifts slightly, and the direction that Earth's axis points slowly wobbles like a spinning top. Together, these slow changes are known as the Milankovitch cycles. Each cycle is incredibly gradual. No human could notice the difference within a lifetime, but over thousands of years, they reshape the planet's climate. When cooler summers prevent winter snow from melting completely, the snow begins to accumulate. More snow reflects more sunlight back into space. The surface cools even further. More snow survives.
More ice forms. A powerful cycle begins. Given enough time, glaciers return. History suggests this process has repeated many times. Long before humans built cities, ice advanced, then retreated, again and again. Nature followed its own rhythm. So, should we expect another Ice Age? Under natural conditions, probably yes. Many scientists believe that, without other influences, Earth would eventually enter another glacial period tens of thousands of years from now. But there is another factor. One unlike anything that shaped previous Ice Ages: humans. Over the past 2 centuries, industrial activity has dramatically increased the amount of greenhouse gases in the atmosphere. These gases trap heat that would otherwise escape into space. As a result, the planet is warming far more rapidly than natural climate cycles alone would predict. Modern climate change is occurring over decades and centuries, not thousands of years. This rapid warming is causing glaciers to melt, sea levels to rise, weather patterns to shift. In fact, some climate scientists suggest that human activity may delay the beginning of the next glacial period for many thousands of years.
The natural rhythm of ice ages may already have been altered. It is a remarkable thought. For millions of years, nature controlled the climate. Now, one intelligent species has become powerful enough to influence the future of the entire planet, whether intentionally or not. Yet despite everything humanity has accomplished, the Ice Age still whispers to us. Ancient ice deep beneath Antarctica and Greenland preserves tiny bubbles of air from worlds long gone. Each bubble contains a sample of Earth's ancient atmosphere, like pages in a frozen history book. Scientists drill deep into these ice cores, reading climates that existed hundreds of thousands of years before civilization. Every layer tells another story: a colder year, a warmer year, a volcanic eruption, a shift in the atmosphere. The ice remembers everything, and through it, we continue learning about our planet's extraordinary past. The Ice Age may no longer dominate the world, but its lessons remain more important than ever, because understanding Earth's past helps us prepare for its future.
The Ice Age ended thousands of years ago. The mammoths are gone. The glaciers have retreated. The frozen plains have become forests, farms, and cities. At first glance, it seems as though that ancient world has completely disappeared. But look a little closer. The Ice Age is still here. Not as towering walls of ice, but as quiet clues scattered across the modern world. Every year, millions of people hike through mountain valleys without realizing who carved them. They stand beside crystal-clear lakes, drive across rolling hills, and admire dramatic cliffs, never knowing that ice created them all. Imagine a glacier more than 2 kilometers thick, slowly moving, only a few centimeters each day. It doesn't seem powerful. Yet over thousands of years, that slow-moving ice behaves like an enormous sheet of sandpaper. It grinds solid rock, scrapes mountains, deepens valleys, and smooths entire landscapes. One of the easiest clues to recognize is the shape of a valley. Most rivers carve narrow, V-shaped valleys, but glaciers create something very different. Broad, deep valleys with steep sides and flat floors, these are known as U-shaped valleys. Many of the world's most spectacular mountain landscapes, from the Alps to parts of North America and New Zealand, owe their shape to ancient glaciers. Then there are the lakes, thousands upon thousands of them. When glaciers retreated, they often left behind deep depressions, these filled with meltwater, becoming the lakes we see today. In Canada alone, there are millions of lakes. Many exist because of the Ice Age. Finland is often called the land of 1,000 lakes. In reality, it has well over 180,000. Again, the glaciers deserve much of the credit. Sometimes the evidence is even stranger.
Imagine finding a giant boulder in the middle of an open field. No nearby mountains, no obvious explanation, just an enormous rock sitting alone. These are called glacial erratics. Long ago, glaciers picked them up from distant mountain ranges. They carried them for hundreds of kilometers. Then, as the ice melted, the rocks were simply left behind, like forgotten luggage after a very long journey. Another hidden clue lies beneath our feet. Many fertile farming regions owe their rich soils to glaciers. As the ice moved, it crushed rock into fine sediments. When the glaciers melted, they spread these minerals across the land. Thousands of years later, those same soils feed millions of people. Without realizing it, every harvest carries part of the Ice Age's legacy. Even rivers tell the story. Some suddenly change direction. Others flow through valleys far larger than the amount of water they now carry. These oversized valleys were originally carved by immense floods released during the melting of the glaciers. The rivers we see today are simply the quiet survivors of a far more dramatic past. In the far north, the evidence becomes even more remarkable. Across parts of Canada and Scandinavia, the land is still rising, very slowly, almost too slowly to notice. Why? Because during the Ice Age, kilometers of ice pressed the Earth's crust downward under unimaginable weight. When the glaciers melted, that pressure disappeared. The land has been slowly rebounding ever since. Even after more than 10,000 years, the Earth is still recovering. Then there is the frozen ground itself. In places like Siberia, Alaska, and northern Canada, vast areas of permafrost remain frozen all year round. Locked within this ancient ground are incredible time capsules, perfectly preserved plants, ancient pollen, seeds, animal bones, and sometimes entire Ice Age creatures. Scientists have uncovered baby mammoths whose fur, skin, and even stomach contents survived for tens of thousands of years inside the frozen earth. These discoveries allow researchers to study the Ice Age in astonishing detail. It's almost like opening a window into another world. Perhaps the greatest reminder of all lives high above us. Visit Greenland or Antarctica, and you'll find ice sheets so immense that they preserve snowfall from hundreds of thousands of years ago. Each layer records another year in Earth's history, like pages in a frozen diary. Together, these clues reveal an extraordinary truth. The Ice Age did not simply disappear, it became the foundation of the modern world. Every glacier that melted, every valley it carved, every lake it created, every soil it enriched, helped shape the planet we call home today. And as scientists continue making new discoveries, the Ice Age is far from over. There are still mysteries hidden beneath the ice, waiting to be uncovered.
Imagine finding a creature that died more than 30,000 years ago, yet its fur is still soft, its skin is still intact. Even the last meal inside its stomach can still be studied. It sounds like science fiction, but in the frozen regions of our planet, it is reality. The Ice Age may have ended thousands of years ago, but in the Arctic, time itself seems to have slowed. Beneath layers of permanently frozen ground, known as permafrost, lie extraordinary remnants of a vanished world. Unlike warm climates where dead plants and animals quickly decay, the frozen Earth acts like a giant natural freezer. The cold prevents bacteria and fungi from breaking down organic material. As a result, creatures that lived during the Ice Age can remain astonishingly well preserved for tens of thousands of years. Every summer, as the Arctic briefly warms, melting ice reveals another hidden treasure. Sometimes it's a single bone, sometimes a tusk, and sometimes an entire animal. One of the most remarkable discoveries was a baby woolly mammoth. Perfectly preserved beneath the frozen soil, its eyelashes, trunk, and even tiny patches of fur remained visible. Scientists could examine its muscles, organs, and stomach contents to learn what it had eaten before it died. For the first time, researchers weren't studying only fossilized bones, they were studying an actual Ice Age animal. It was as close as anyone could come to meeting a mammoth face to face. Mammoths are not the only creatures emerging from the ice. Researchers have discovered Ice Age wolves, cave lion cubs, ancient bison, horses, and even woolly rhinoceroses preserved in remarkable condition. Some still contain traces of blood. Others preserve DNA that can be carefully analyzed in modern laboratories. These discoveries have transformed our understanding of prehistoric life. DNA allows scientists to compare extinct animals with their living relatives. It reveals how populations changed over time, how species migrated, how they adapted to colder climates, and sometimes why they disappeared.
Ancient plants are also hidden within the frozen ground. Seeds buried for tens of thousands of years have occasionally remained viable. In carefully controlled laboratory conditions, scientists have successfully germinated some ancient plant tissues, offering a rare glimpse into ecosystems long vanished. Even tiny grains of pollen trapped in layers of ice tell remarkable stories. Different plants produce different pollen. By studying which types appear in each layer, scientists can reconstruct ancient landscapes. A layer rich in grass pollen suggests open steppe. A later layer filled with tree pollen reveals expanding forests. Without a single written record, the ice quietly documents the changing world. Then there are the ice cores. In Greenland and Antarctica, scientists drill deep into glaciers, extracting cylinders of ancient ice that can stretch for kilometers. Each layer represents another snowfall from the distant past. Compressed within those layers are tiny bubbles of ancient air. These microscopic bubbles are priceless. They contain actual samples of Earth's atmosphere from hundreds of thousands of years ago. By measuring the gases trapped inside, scientists can determine how temperatures, carbon dioxide levels, and other environmental conditions change through time. It is like reading Earth's diary, one frozen page at a time. But these discoveries also come with a warning. As today's climate continues to warm, permafrost is melting faster than before. While this reveals incredible archaeological treasures, it also exposes them to rapid decay. A mammoth preserved safely for 30,000 years can begin deteriorating within weeks once exposed to air. Researchers often race against time to recover these fragile remains before they are lost forever. The melting permafrost may even reveal places where ancient humans once lived. Stone tools, campfires,
animal bones, footprints. Each discovery adds another chapter to humanity's earlier story. The frozen ground still holds countless secrets. Some may rewrite what we know about the Ice Age, others may remain hidden for centuries. But one thing is certain, the ice has never forgotten. It has patiently guarded the memories of an entire lost world, and as long as scientists continue exploring, that forgotten world will keep speaking to us. Its voice may be silent, but its story is far from finished.
When people hear the words Ice Age, they often imagine only one thing: a world of snow, towering glaciers, and shaggy mammoths wandering across frozen plains. But the greatest legacy of the Ice Age isn't hidden beneath the ice, it's hidden within us. Every challenge our ancestors faced helped shape the people we would eventually become. Imagine living in a world where every sunrise brought uncertainty. Would there be enough food today? Would the hunting party return safely? Would a blizzard arrive before nightfall? Would your children survive another winter? These weren't rare questions, they were daily realities. The Ice Age demanded more than strength, it demanded intelligence. No single person could survive alone for long. Families worked together, communities shared food, experienced elders passed on knowledge, hunters cooperated instead of competing, children learned by watching and listening. Slowly, generation after generation, humans became masters of teamwork. Perhaps this was our greatest evolutionary advantage, not sharper claws, not stronger muscles, but cooperation. The Ice Age also encouraged innovation. Every problem required a solution. Cold demanded better clothing, danger required stronger weapons, long journeys inspired lighter tools, scarce resources forced people to waste nothing. Bone became needles, animal sinew became thread, ivory became artwork.
Even small discoveries could mean the difference between life and death. Over thousands of years, these countless tiny improvements transformed humanity. The habit of solving problems never disappeared. It became part of who we are. The Ice Age also taught patience. Glaciers moved only centimeters each day. Climate shifted over thousands of years. Great changes often happened so slowly that no single generation could fully see them. Yet those gradual changes reshaped continents. It is a reminder that nature often works on timescales far beyond a human lifetime. Modern science continues to reveal how deeply connected everything is. A slight change in Earth's orbit can influence sunlight. Sunlight influences temperature. Temperature affects glaciers. Glaciers reshape rivers. Rivers influence ecosystems. Ecosystems shape animal migrations. Animal migrations influence human survival. Nothing exists in isolation. Everything is connected. The Ice Age also reminds us how quickly life can change when environments transform. Entire ecosystems disappeared. Powerful predators vanished forever. Species that once dominated the Earth became memories preserved only in fossils. Adaptability mattered more than size. Flexibility mattered more than strength. It is a lesson that remains just as relevant today. Modern humans often think of ourselves as separate from nature. But the Ice Age tells another story. We are part of Earth's system. Always have been, always will be. The air we breathe, the water we drink, the soil that grows our food, the climate that shapes our seasons, all remain connected to the same natural processes that governed the Ice Age. Perhaps the greatest gift left by that frozen world is perspective. Human civilization feels ancient to us. Yet compared with Earth's history, it is astonishingly young. The pyramids, the Roman Empire, the Industrial Revolution, even the modern age, all appeared only after the last great glaciers had already begun to retreat. The Ice Age reminds us that our story is only one chapter in a much longer history. A history written not by kings or emperors, but by mountains, rivers, ice,
wind, and time itself. As we continue exploring our planet, we discover that every landscape holds memories. Every fossil tells a story. Every glacier preserves another page of Earth's remarkable past. The Ice Age may belong to history, but its lessons belong to the future. Because understanding where we came from helps us understand where we may one day go. And perhaps, it also reminds us to care for the extraordinary world we inherited.
Before we leave the Ice Age behind, let's take one last journey. Not as scientists, not as archaeologists, but as silent travelers. Imagine that, for just one day, you could step back 20,000 years into the past. The first thing you would notice is the silence. There are no engines, no aeroplanes, no distant hum of cities, only the whisper of the wind crossing an endless frozen plain. The air is sharp and painfully cold. Every breath forms a cloud before your face. The snow beneath your feet crunches with every step. Far away, the morning sun rises over a landscape that seems to stretch forever. The glaciers shimmer like mountains of crystal. Their blue-white walls reflect the pale golden light. The world feels untouched, wild, ancient. As you walk further, enormous footprints appear in the snow. Each one is nearly the size of a dinner table. You follow them carefully. Soon, the ground begins to tremble, not violently, but gently, rhythmically. Then you see them, a herd of woolly mammoths, dozens of giants moving together across the frozen grassland. The oldest female leads the way. Several playful calves stay safely between the adults. Their long fur sways in the icy wind. Their curved tusks catch the morning light. No one speaks, no one needs to. The scene itself is enough. Nearby, a group of reindeer grazes beneath scattered shrubs. Wild horses gallop across the open steppe.
A pair of woolly rhinoceroses slowly clear away snow with their massive horns, searching for buried grass. Life is everywhere, even in the coldest places on Earth. Then, a sudden silence falls over the plain. The birds disappear. The horses stop moving. The mammoths lift their trunks into the air. They have sensed something. Hidden among the tall grasses, a cave lion waits patiently. Its golden eyes never leave the herd. The hunters know they cannot defeat a healthy adult mammoth. Instead, they watch the youngest calves, searching for weakness, searching for opportunity. But the mammoths remain close together. The adults form a protective circle. After several tense moments, the lions quietly retreat. Today, the herd has won. As evening approaches, thin columns of smoke rise in the distance. You follow them toward the mouth of a limestone cave. Inside, a small group of humans gathers around a glowing fire. Children laugh softly. An elder carefully sharpens a stone blade. Someone stirs a pot suspended above the flames. Another person stitches warm animal hides using a delicate bone needle. There is no electricity, no written language, no modern technology. Yet the warmth inside the cave feels strangely familiar. A parent comforts a sleepy child. Friends share food. Stories are told beneath dancing firelight. The people of the Ice Age may have lived differently from us, but in the moments that mattered most, they were remarkably human. Later that night, you step outside. The sky is breathtaking. With no city lights, countless stars fill the darkness from horizon to horizon. The Milky Way stretches across the heavens like a river of silver. Somewhere beyond the northern horizon, the shimmering curtains of the aurora dance silently above the glaciers. Green, blue, purple, a breathtaking display of light that has inspired wonder for thousands of generations. You realize something profound. The people who stood beneath this same sky wondered about the stars, loved their families, feared the unknown, and hoped for tomorrow, just as we do today. The Ice Age was never simply about survival. It was about life, about resilience, about curiosity, about the enduring spirit that carried humanity through one of the harshest chapters in Earth's history. As dawn approaches once more, the frozen world slowly fades. The mammoths disappear into the mist. The hunters continue their journey across the endless plains. The glacier stands silent beneath the rising sun, and history quietly turns another page. But before our journey truly ends,
there is one final story to tell. A story that reminds us why the Ice Age still matters, even today.
Our journey is almost over. The glaciers have melted. The mammoths have vanished. The ancient hunters have disappeared into history. At first, it may seem that the Ice Age belongs to a world so distant that it has little to do with our own. But that couldn't be further from the truth. The Ice Age is not merely a story of the past. It is a reminder of how extraordinary and fragile our planet truly is. For more than 2 million years, Earth experienced repeated cycles of freezing and warming. Entire continents changed shape. Oceans rose and fell. Forests became grasslands. Grasslands became forests once again. Species appeared, others disappeared forever. Through every transformation, one lesson remained constant. Nothing in nature stands still. Change is the rule of our planet. When the climate cooled, life adapted. When the climate warmed, life adapted again. Some creatures evolved to survive, others could not. The mammoths were perfectly designed for a frozen world, yet when that world disappeared, their remarkable adaptations became a disadvantage. The strongest animal is not always the one that survives. Often, it is the one that can adapt. Humans succeeded not because we were the biggest or the fastest. We survived because we learned. We shared knowledge. We cooperated. We invented. Every generation built upon the discoveries of the one before it. That tradition continues today. Modern scientists study ancient pollen trapped in ice. They analyze DNA from frozen mammoths. They examine cave paintings, stone tools, and footprints left behind by our ancestors. Piece by piece, they reconstruct a world that vanished thousands of years ago, and in doing so, they also learn more about ourselves. The Ice Age teaches humility. It reminds us that mountains can move, that rivers can change course, that coastlines can disappear beneath the sea, that climates can transform entire civilizations.
When we look at Earth through the lens of deep time, our own lives become just a brief moment in a much larger story. Yet that moment still matters, because we are now the caretakers of a planet shaped by countless generations before us. The lakes we sail across, the valleys we farm, the forests we protect, the mountains we climb, all were influenced by events that began long before the first human city was ever built. Even the air trapped inside ancient glaciers tells a story of changing climates, volcanic eruptions, shifting ecosystems, and the resilience of life. These frozen archives continue helping scientists understand not only the past, but also the future. The more we learn about previous climate changes, the better prepared we become to understand the challenges of our own time. Knowledge, after all, has always been humanity's greatest survival tool. Perhaps that is the true legacy of the Ice Age. Not the mammoths, not the glaciers, not even the magnificent cave paintings. Its greatest legacy is the reminder that curiosity has always carried us forward. Our ancestors crossed frozen continents because they wanted to survive. Today, we explore the universe because we want to understand. The same spirit of discovery still burns within us, from the frozen caves of prehistoric Europe to research stations in Antarctica to spacecraft exploring distant worlds. Humanity continues asking the same timeless question: what lies beyond the horizon? The Ice Age answered one question, but it inspired thousands more, and that endless search for knowledge may be the most human story of all.
Our journey has come to its end. For the past 2 hours, we have walked across frozen plains where mammoths once roamed. We have stood beside glaciers taller than skyscrapers. We have watched ancient hunters follow the great herds beneath endless winter skies. We have entered silent caves where the first artists painted stories by the light of a flickering fire. And we have witnessed an entire world slowly transform. Now, imagine one final scene. The last great glacier stretches across the northern horizon. Its surface glows softly beneath the golden light of a setting sun. The wind that once howled across endless ice has grown quieter. Drops of meltwater fall gently from the frozen cliffs. One by one, they disappear into the streams below. The glacier is saying goodbye. Not with words, but with water. Around it, the world is changing. Small flowers bloom where only snow once existed. Young forests spread across valleys that had been frozen for thousands of years. Birds return with the warmer seasons. Rivers flow freely towards the sea. Life is beginning again. Far away, a small group of humans watches this changing world. They cannot know that one day their descendants will build cities, write books, cross oceans, fly through the skies, or even walk upon the moon. They simply continue living, teaching their children, sharing food around the fire, looking up at the same stars we still see today. Without realizing it,
They are carrying the future of humanity forward. The mammoths have disappeared. The saber-toothed cats have become legends. The giant rhinoceroses and enormous sloths exist now only in fossils hidden beneath the earth. Yet none of them are truly gone. Every museum, every scientific discovery, every cave painting, every ancient bone preserved beneath the Arctic ice keeps their memory alive. The Ice Age was never simply a chapter about cold weather. It was a story of transformation, a story of resilience, a story of adaptation. It showed that even the harshest environments can give rise to beauty, that survival often depends on cooperation rather than strength, and that every ending quietly prepares the way for a new beginning. When we walk through a mountain valley, we are walking through a landscape carved by ancient glaciers. When we stand beside a crystal-clear lake, we are seeing the work of ice that melted thousands of years ago. When we look at fertile fields feeding millions of people, we are witnessing a gift left behind by the Ice Age. The past is never truly gone. It lives beneath our feet. It flows through our rivers. It echoes across our mountains. And it survives in every question we continue to ask about the world around us. Perhaps that is why the story of the Ice Age continues to captivate us, because somewhere deep inside we recognize ourselves in those ancient travelers. Like them, we are explorers. We face uncertainty, we adapt to change, we search for meaning, and we keep moving forward one generation after another. As you leave this frozen world behind, take one last look across the endless white horizon. The mammoths have faded into the distance. The hunters have disappeared beyond the hills. The fire inside the cave burns a little lower. Snow begins to fall once again, softly, silently, covering the footprints of a world that changed everything. Thank you for joining this journey through one of the most extraordinary chapters in Earth's history. Until our next adventure, sleep peacefully, dream deeply, and remember, the world beneath your feet holds stories far older than any of us can imagine. The end.